Well, hey, good morning. I just wanted to pop in with you today because I wanted to share something that I keep reading in the Bible right now in my own personal devotional time. And because it keeps popping up, I feel like it's something that is probably worth sharing. Now, I will give you a trigger warning right now. Okay, what I'm going to share is it may be one of those things that you hear that you're like, oh, you jerk. That's tough. You know, and like sometimes you ever have somebody say something to you or present something to you that you just want to pop up a mirror in their face and say, back at you, chump. I don't know if this is going to be one of those times because what I'm going to share with you is something that God's been saying to me and showing me, and I suspect that it's something that many of us need to hear today. But what I want to talk about, it really is a sign of spiritual maturity. Okay, the thing I'm gonna share with you in just a moment is a hallmark of a person who is not just emotionally mature or intellectually mature, but a sign of someone who is spiritually mature. This is a sign of someone who is growing in a relationship with God in such a way that he's transforming and changing their life. But what it also means is this, is that if you don't see this thing in your life, and if you don't have this thing as a quality of your personality, of your attitude, of your life, then it may mean that you may be struggling with some spiritual immaturity, or at a minimum, maybe some emotional immaturity. And so, saying that, I've probably caused you all to check out because you're like, I didn't sign on and watch this video to get beat up. Well, I hope I'm not beating you up because I've been being beaten up by this too. So like any beating I give you is a beating God's given me. So I don't know if that's like a good thing or a bad thing. Hey guys, I'm still Christy, Joe. Good to see you guys. I'm glad you're here. Okay. So this is the thing. This is the hallmark, the sign of spiritual maturity. And if you see this in your life, you know that God is doing a transformative work in you. But if this is not a characteristic or a quality of your life, you may need to reevaluate and reassess what's happening inside your heart. And in Proverbs chapter 15, verse 21, I don't have my reading glasses on, guys. This happens to me every time. My stinking old 40-something-year-old eyeballs. Okay, this is what it says in Proverbs chapter 15, verse 31. I had to do this to see it. Verse 31. Okay. If you listen to constructive criticism, you will be at home among the wise. But if you reject criticism, you only harm yourself. But if you listen to correction, you grow in understanding. Okay, I'm going to read that again, and I want you to hear what I'm talking about, a sign of spiritual maturity. If you listen to constructive criticism, you will be at home among the wise. If you reject criticism, you only harm yourself. But if you listen to correction, you grow in understanding. A hallmark, a sign of spiritual maturity and of spiritual growth in your life is that you are willing to listen to constructive criticism. Is that you are willing to hear other people when they want to speak into your life about things that maybe they see that you don't see yourself. And a person who is spiritually mature will listen to those things, will process them, and in humility will take those things to the Lord and say, God, is there anything in here that might be true that you want to address in my life? And conversely, and I'm not calling you out, okay? This is for your neighbor, your kids, your husband, this is not you. But conversely, if you struggle to listen to constructive criticism, if you struggle when you feel challenged or corrected or disagreed with, if your instinctive reaction is to fight, is to push back, and if your immediate response to the person who's giving you constructive criticism is that you're wrong, you're an idiot, you basic, you out. If that's your response, then you probably have some spiritual immaturity in your life that God wants to work out and that God wants to deal with. I mean, God talks about this in the Bible all over the place. And there's another proverb here in Proverbs chapter 29 that I read today that really prompted me to want to talk about this. Because this is not something I wanted to talk about. This has been on my mind for a couple weeks really to talk about, and I've been putting it off because I want to encourage people. I want to lift people up. I want you to hear me talk and leave going, yeah, and feel like unicorns are lifting you up onto a cloud. I don't want you to feel beat up, but God keeps just hitting me with this over and over. And I read this morning in Proverbs chapter 29, verse 1. And I don't have to use my reading glasses because I know it's verse 1 because it's right after the big number. And it says this: whoever stubbornly refuses to accept criticism will suddenly be broken beyond repair. I don't want that for your life. I don't want your life to be broken beyond repair because there is an issue of spiritual immaturity where you just had a hard time listening to constructive criticism from people who cared about you, people who loved you, and people who wanted what's best for you. And ultimately, from God. Because God is the ultimate constructive criticizer. Ultimately, God has a path and a plan that he's laid out for your life. God has laid out steps and a way for us to live so that we can experience the best life possible. And when God is looking at our lives, he's saying this: hey, you need to address this thing. If you just need to tweak this a little bit, you need to turn here, you need to change your course. God is ultimately constructively guiding us on the path of abundant life. And if we can't hear the people around us who might be trying to give us constructive criticism, then it's going to be very hard for us to hear from God. And that's why people who are spiritually mature are people who are going to listen to others. And they're going to say, they might be right. So I'm going to wrap up just with a quick story. This happened to me, okay? I lived this out. And when I was in college, many of you guys have heard this. I've shared this story a lot because it was one of the most impactful moments of my whole life. But when I was in college, I was really pretty negative. And so anytime I would talk about something, I either loved it or it sucked. It was either the best thing ever or it was hot garbage that should have never been made. Movies, music, books, it didn't even matter. Like that was me. It was either great or awful. And as a result, I could be really negative, strongly negative on things that I didn't like. I could be kind of a jerk. And I remember one night I was sitting in my dorm room with one of my roommates, and I was just ranting on whatever stupid thing I thought sucked at the time, being my typical negative self in the moment. And my roommate stopped me and he's like, dude, listen, if you can't stop being so negative, I don't think I can hang around you anymore. And I was totally surprised when he said that. I was just like, what are you even talking about? I'm not negative. And I was put out. And so he left after that because he was done in that moment. And my initial instinct was, no, you're wrong. I'm not negative. You're negative. And so that night, though, was just bugging me. It's just stirring through my brain what he had said and like the fact that he'd confronted me about this thing that he saw in my life. And it was really bothering me. And so I just decided that I was going to listen to what I said. And I literally said that. I was like, God, this jerk, what is he talking about? He doesn't know. But I was like, Lord, just help me to listen to the things I say. And so for the next several days, I literally just paid attention to the words that were coming out of my mouth. And you know what I found? He was dead right. He was totally right. I was so negative all the time, and I was dragging down every relationship, every conversation that I had with people. And his constructive criticism in my life pointed that out to me, and it changed. It's one of the biggest changes that's ever happened in my life because I had a friend who told me that I was wrong. So I hope that you can take this to heart. If you're wrestling with this and you're struggling hearing this, then it may mean that this is the constructive criticism that you need to hear, particularly right now. Maybe you need to hear this in relationship to how you communicate with people on social media. Maybe you need to hear this in terms of your approach to dealing with the COVID pandemic we're in, or to politics, or to Black Lives Matter, or to how you relate to people at work or the office, or when raising your kids. There's a million areas of our lives in which we can receive God's constructive criticism. And I hope that today that you will say yes to be willing to listen, to hear from him, and to hear from other people who love you, so that God can change you and let you experience a better life than you're living right now. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.